everyone, this is the Maria Cozette Show, where the left brain meets the right. I could not be happier about tonight's guest, so stay tuned for that interview. He is brilliant and has incredible artistic vision. For any further information about the show, be sure to visit mariacozette.com. Stay with us. You're back, you're tuned in to the Maria Cozette Show. I have a very special guest with me, a virtuoso, filmmaker and visual effects artist, Roger Kupelian. Welcome, welcome. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm good.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so excited that you're here. And I have a lot to talk to you about. You're highly accomplished, have done incredible things. So before we get to all of the juicy creative stuff, tell me a little bit about your educational and professional background.
Well, professionally, I'm a 25-year veteran of the visual effects industry.
Amazing.
So
quite a bit of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I put some time in, 2 decades and a half. And before that, I was involved in other kinds of production.
Right.
And my career, the professional background, varies quite a bit.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that. What were your first experiences as far as being a filmmaker?
Well, as far as being a filmmaker, we would make our own movies in the garage. We would blow things up. We would, this is back in the days when people used to shoot on a Super 8 film, and you had to actually cut the film and do little scratches on them to make little lasers and stuff. And this was all stuff.
How cool is that?
It was all stuff that we saw people, the making of Star Wars, right? And
right.
Like, oh, we want to be just like those guys.
Yeah.
So we would do that. And it came from there. So it was just a natural thing. It was always something that I just did, and I'd get my friends to, hey, here's an idea. Let's just all get in these cheap costumes and let's just do something. And we would do it. And
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you still have footage from those days?
I do. Embarrassingly, I do have footage from those days.
I wish I asked you to bring that here. It would have been amazing.
Not a chance.
Not a chance. So as far as being a visual effects artist, for my audience that may not know what that is or what the work entails, what is visual effects? What do you do? And perhaps cover, I know you've done a lot, but maybe some of the projects that have resonated with you most.
Well, visual effects artists it's a broad term.
Right.
Okay, so it basically is somebody that works in the digital effects industry. It could be on television and film, commercials, even now webcasts, webisodes, and of course now with Netflix and Amazon, they employ a lot of visual effects companies. And there's a difference between visual effects and special effects.
Right.
Special effects is whatever's in front of camera, and visual effects is usually more in post, although there are people that will get involved in a project early on and start creating some of the scenes, the preliminary monsters and so on and so forth, so the director has an idea of what he or she wants to do.
Right.
So generally put, that's what visual effects is. It's very digital, it's very computer driven, but it also involves visual effects supervisors who will be on set to make sure things are being shot the right way, so later on the visual effects artist can work with it.
Wow, interesting. Very interesting. And so I know that you've worked on Lord of the Rings. I had to mention it because I love Lord of the Rings. I'm super nerdy in that sense. How was that experience?
Well, Lord of the Rings was an amazing experience. And every film experience, especially the ones that are really great films, that they're ambitious and trying to do a lot, you will encounter lots of really amazing people. I worked with some of the best, most creative, talented people I've ever met in my life.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we had some really good times, but it was also difficult because we were doing something that was difficult.
Yeah.
And every time there was an award, every time one of the Lord of the Rings films would win an award, then there was a lot of pressure to do even better the next time.
Right.
And our supervisors were phenomenal. I think they were really changing the industry. And so growing pains are growing pains for a reason, but when you look back on it, you have your mile-high view and you look back and you say, wow, that was an incredible experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you have a very unique background in being Armenian, coming from West Africa. I don't think I've ever met anyone, as far as being an Armenian from there. How has that impacted your artistry?
Well, I mean, being a African Armenian, it makes you the perfect insider-outsider. So I'm able to pretty much adapt to many different cultures,
Right.
including the different Armenian cultures, where it's Beiruti or from Armenia or Iran or even America has their own peculiar different culture as well, but also cultures that are outside, because that's how I grew up.
Right.
The way I grew up, it was like a United Nations. So even though I was raised with a pretty strong understanding of my cultural identity, which gave me a good foundation, you still interpreted that in relation to other people's cultures, which was just as valid. So there was a lot of sharing. And there wasn't this idea that somebody had to change and become like you. It was just organic. You naturally did, especially as kids, when you're playing together and you like the same shows, you like the same toys, you're there. It didn't matter as much.
Right.
And I don't think I encountered the differences as much until we came here.
Really? That's interesting.
And then you see what, racism is like. And I mean, back then, of course, in Sierra Leone, in West Africa, there is a sense of history. There is a sense of what went on before. I'd be lying if I told you that people weren't very aware and in some ways angry about what had happened, but they're going on with their lives and they're hopeful for the future, at least at that time, before things went really south. But over here, there was just like another tension. And this is when I really began to see it in a way I didn't see it over there.
Yeah. Yeah. And is there a fairly large community of Armenians there?
There must have been about maybe 4 families in Sierra Leone itself.
I see.
And that includes my family. My dad, who was his twin brother, had his family there. And then there were a couple other Armenian families, one of them that owned an amazing restaurant that was famous in the country.
How cool.
Yeah, I think it was called the Lighthouse Armenian Restaurant, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And everybody knew it. There was a lot of Lebanese in the country, and they used to love going there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a boss actually that was Lebanese and from there. And that's when I first learned that, Middle Easterns could be there. I wasn't aware that Armenians lived there, but yeah, I was like, how did that all happen? It's very interesting to me how people migrate all around the world and, what their, story is really. It is very, very fascinating. So let's move on with all these amazing things that you've brought here. Let's talk about East of Byzantium, and artistic vision plays a key role in storytelling. So how did this story come about? I mean, the basis of it, yes, of course we know, but the inspiration behind it, and what was the vision? How did it develop?
Well, it's like pretty much for me, it's a lifelong obsession. Like for many of us, we grew up with the stories, but because, again, being in Africa, growing up, there is a bit of a vacuum, and you try to fill it with a mythology of your people.
Right.
So in addition to learning about all these other cultures, including the United States, there was a strong United States presence in Sierra Leone at that time. You also really had a strong idea of these characters in Armenian history. So our kings and queens, the princesses, the magical creatures and so forth. And it was a mythology that you kind of embodied. So as time went on, and as you start getting into the film industry, and I start seeing these people that I'm working with and these tools that are available suddenly with digital, all of a sudden an independent filmmaker can get out there and start really, exploring stories in a way that you couldn't before. So being in New Zealand in 2002, while working on Lord of the Rings, I met amazing reenactors. These are people that actually will reenact different time periods.
Okay.
And there were a cavalry unit as well.
Right.
And one of them was also the sword maker for Lord of the Rings.
Oh, nice.
So it was a very colorful group, very
Yeah.
interesting and really wonderful people. And they were really into history, and they got really excited about the whole Vartanant story, believe it or not. So there was an opportunity there, and I started asking people, look, can we make some of the costumes? Can we do some of the writing around? I just want to see it. I want to see it. I want to see what it actually looks like for real. Not just the stuff we see on the stained glass church windows and some of the
Right.
textbooks. With some real research, what would this stuff really have looked like? And it was amazing because the world suddenly just started to explode and come alive. And that's where this idea came from, and this obsession, if you will. And it's been, a burden of love, really, for the last how many years, just trying to get this project out there.
It's epic. It's epic, and it's beautifully illustrated. And thank you, by the way, for gifting me these books. if we can look through them, I know they're in front of you, so I want to show the viewers some of the illustrations in there. And again, I mean, you're no stranger to the community. Everyone loves you and really admires your talent. So I'm sure you've seen this before. But I mean, the illustrations, it doesn't do it justice, me holding it up, so I might as well not do it. But where are these books available? I know April Bookstore, and are there any other locations where people can get them?
Sure. There's also Legacy Comics in Glendale.
Oh, cool.
And they also have this one, the Rogers Robot
Yes,
book.
we're going to start talking about that now, actually. Perfect segue. Let's do it. Let's talk about Rogers Robots 451. And you brought this piece here, too. So let's talk about that. What is it all about?
Well, that's Roburashka. And that was actually...
Cool. After Chiburashka.
That's right. That's
cool.
right. The Rogers Robots universe, which is, again, it's epic in its own way, but it was a nice departure and brain break away from the East Byzantium universe.
Right.
So I wanted to do something that was an escape, because I think when you walk away from something and do something else, your brain's still working on that first thing.
Yeah.
And comes up with some creative solutions, but now you're free to go explore something else and give yourself a break. So it came about because of all these really kind of perplexing things that I've been facing as a visual effects artist. For example, working in the industry. And you always hear about people saying, well, you know what, at some point AI is going to take over all of this. Artificial intelligence is going to start making these movies way down in the future. It's already doing interesting things like, writing books and so on and so forth. Thankfully, it's still probably a little ways off. And I always used to joke with my friends that I work with, visual effects. I said, look, having worked in some of these companies, if they could write software that could replace us, and me as a matte painter, for example, as a guy who does the backgrounds, other people too, animators, if they could do that, they would. Because, I mean, it's a profit-driven system. So if they could eliminate some of the artists and basically tell the AI, hey, you know what, go ahead and whatever. So you think about that as an artist and a storyteller, you're like, okay, even that's being taken away from me.
Yeah.
Now, okay, I get it. You're going to make cars with robots. You're going to make, I don't know, assemble stuff on Mars with robots. I understand that. There's sometimes a reason you do that. But if you're going to take art, you're going to take writing, some of the other things human beings do away from us as well. So it gets a little scary, so you start thinking about that, and that's where the Rogers Robots concept kind of came about.
Yeah, and there's a lot of symbolism behind it, if you can touch on that as well.
Well, it's interesting because the 451, right? To me, 451 is an important date because that's the Vartanon date for us, but it's also the, Fahrenheit 451.
Right.
And also 451, I mean, in world history, there's a lot of other things that happen in that year. And at the same time, a lot of people who are geeks about gaming will tell you that 451 is a number that keeps appearing. It's sort of an Easter egg that just keeps coming up.
Right.
Like a code to open a door or something like that. I didn't know this until I started working with Rogers Robots 451, and people started emailing me and saying, is this the reason you did this? I'm like, wow, this is a really special number. It's like everywhere, So yeah, that's really what the origination of that was.
Yeah. And what about the artwork here? I know you had it at the Kupelian Gallery.
Yes.
How did that whole exhibit go and that experience?
The Kupelian show, and I want to thank Greg and Caroline for that. That was
love
amazing.
them, yes. Shout out to Greg and Caroline.
And a shout out to Harry Vorparian, who is a longtime friend, and he was the curator of this. Also, a lot of the people that showed up and supported, by buying paintings and so on. And I hope they bought them because they liked them, not just because they're being nice.
Yeah.
We sold over half the paintings that I'd done.
Wow.
And these paintings were produced specifically for the Rogers Robots universe to coincide with a Kickstarter I was doing to publish the book. So it all kind of happened at the same time.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so that's when Roburashka was painted as one of these quick things I did. And it was that little guy was actually a Mother's Day present to my wife. And at some point, I said, can I please show it? We'll put a little red dot on it, but can I please show it?
Right. And can people still get the pieces?
Yes, the pieces are still available through to thank him, whatever's left.
Wonderful.
I'm actually running out.
Nice, which is a good problem to have.
It is. Some new stuff coming in. And these are all oil paintings, robots on canvas. And to me, the way I approached the show was, if in the future robots have a consciousness, they gain consciousness and they start having an existential crisis and they have to deal with it. Well, if they did an art show to deal with it, this would be the show.
That is so cool.
It all works together.
I love how your brain works. It's amazing. What a blessing to have you here. You're probably one of the most creative people I've had here because you've managed to utilize your creativity in a number of different ways. So I must ask how you determine where your art ends up. Is it whether it's book, canvas, films? How do you determine that?
Well, it's sort of kind of demands its own
platform. Yeah.
Great word. As I'm working on it. For example, East of Byzantium, it's also a docudrama that I'm working on with great obstacles, but still in process. But at the same time, while I was putting the material together, I said, this would be really good as a graphic novel because I love comic books, I love graphic novels, and part of what I do as a visual effects artist is sequential art to help directors figure out how a scene is going to go and how to storyboard out, a particular process, a particular sequence. And so that to me was just a natural.
Yeah.
I said, let's put it in book form. So no matter what happens with my project, people can still pick this up and say, okay, this is the project. This is the story you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
So that was that. The interesting thing is when I do digital work professionally, a lot of what I do is landscapes. I do hard objects. I do, just landscapes, seascapes, spacescapes, and then I'll, do some storyboards and whatever. But when I'm doing these robot paintings, it's such an organic and earthy process. I'm doing something that's really mechanical looking, but I'm using a very organic and heartfelt, almost hurtful, almost tortured process to bring it out. Because to me, it's almost like maybe it's the Gemini, I love working in opposites. And I think that's really, that tension of opposites is really what makes something interesting.
Yeah. And I think honestly the best art, whatever form of art it is, it's produced, to its highest potential when you're approaching it in a very emotional way. So whether for me, when I write music, the best songs are written when I'm really sad. I don't know why, that's just, so I guess when you're going through a lot of emotional turmoil, whether it's good, bad, whatever, but, good art comes out of it, so.
I have a question about that, actually.
Yeah.
Do you think the good songs are written when you're sad, but is that the same as when someone's depressed? Do you think that someone can create when they're depressed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think it's different for music than it is maybe with visual arts?
No. I feel like no, I don't think that it differs as far as the type of art.
Sure.
Yeah, no.
So it's got to be something that's swelling up to come out.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's why it's called an outlet, because you have to let it out some way, and the best way is creativity and art, and
Yep.
That's why we're here.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, regardless of all your amazing achievements, Roger, your credo is that if you think you know it all, you're either 5 years old or belong in a sanitarium. And I love that. It conveys an incredible amount of humility and the idea that we're always learning. And I absolutely agree. So with that said, what do you hope to accomplish in the coming years?
Well, I have a few things on the boil.
Nice.
And as the universe decrees or providence or whatever, and also, of course, my efforts, and also whatever happens in our lives, life has a way of dealing you a few lemons.
Yeah.
So, I think that whatever it is, I know the road there is going to be so windy that I'm not going to be able to predict. Just like the way I fell into the film industry.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, I was in Qarabağ in 1994 shooting an embedded war zone documentary.
Wow.
Okay, and we were being shelled at by Azeri tanks. This was the last battle because after that they had a ceasefire.
Yeah, 94. Yeah. Wow.
And that was a documentary that I was doing as a personal sort of journey.
Yeah.
And I thought that's what I was going to do. And about a year and a half later, I'm working on a film with Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny. Space Jam.
Yeah, Space Jam.
I mean, look at the two. Like,
I know.
How did this,
And now we're here with Roger's robots.
Here we're Roger's robots. So you're never going to know. And I think that for people who really want to have that outlet, they want to have that You just do, and you just keep doing, and you just keep weaving that sort of journey, and at some point, it's going to open up.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of being an artist and being a good artist, I think, is growing and growing as an artist, versatility, and you're all about versatility. I mean, come on, we're like surrounded by it, and we've talked about it throughout the show, so it's incredible. This question I ask all my guests, and I wanted to know why you think it's important for professionals to exercise both sides of the brain and pursue their creative endeavors.
Well, we have become very over-specialized in our society. People who are very creative also have this very philosophical, practical, everyday side that they explore, and they have to. So the same can be true in reverse. I mean, my degree is actually in English Lit. It's not in film, or art. These are all things that just happened. So we tend to sell ourselves short, and especially in our culture. People are pushed into things, into careers that they don't necessarily want. It's just like the practical thing to do. Go be a doctor, go be a lawyer, go do this, go do that. And if that's really what you want to do, fine. But at some point, if you've left part of yourself behind, part of the story that you're trying to tell, you are your story, you have to tell it. So you have to find a way to tell it, even if it's just for yourself. Even if you're just drawing for yourself, and they could be, some people are, like I have a friend who's a doctor, he's got these really lovely drawings that he does, but they're for himself, and I know why he does it. It's to really feed this other child that's within him, and allow him to succeed and to exist as a sane human being on this planet. And we're seeing a lot of insanity around us right now. I mean, social media is not helping.
Right.
So for people to have an outlet, and I think that would go a long way to help people deal with some of these, if you want to call them demons or whatever the, anxieties that they have. And
yeah, just deal with life better.
That's right.
Yeah, well said. Roger that. Yes, thank you so much for coming on. I really, I feel so blessed to have you here, and I truly wish you the very, very best in all your creative endeavors. You're just amazing. Please stay with us for more of the Maria Cozette Show.
To create along with nature. To masterfully blend subtle flavors. To trust time in the making of history. To share everything we are proud of. Ararat, from heart to heart.
Know the Greats, where we spotlight a legend. Born in 1927, John McCarthy was an American computer scientist and cognitive scientist, recognized as the father of artificial intelligence. McCarthy was a professor emeritus, giant in the field of computer science, and seminal figure in artificial intelligence. He was one of the founders of the discipline of AI, invented the Lisp programming language family, which is, by the way, the second oldest computer language and still used today, significantly influenced the design of ALGOL programming language, and popularized timesharing. After graduating high school 2 years early, McCarthy showed an early aptitude for mathematics and taught himself college math by studying the textbooks used at the nearby California Institute of Technology. As a result, he was able to skip the first 2 years of mathematics at Caltech. McCarthy spent most of his career at Stanford University. John McCarthy is one of the founding fathers of artificial intelligence, together with Alan Turing, Marvin Minsky, Alan Newell, and Herbert Simon. McCarthy coined the term artificial intelligence in 1955 and organized the famous Dartmouth Conference in the summer of 1956. This conference started AI as a field. And I quote, "If it takes 200 years to achieve artificial intelligence, And then, finally, there's a textbook that explains how it's done. The hardest part of that textbook to write will be the part that explains why people didn't think of it 200 years ago. Youth who are bullied are at an increased risk for depression, anxiety, sleep difficulties, lower academic achievement, and suicide. Nearly 1 in 5 students report being bullied during the school year, impacting over 5 million youth annually, and occurrences typically peak in middle school. Stomp Out Bullying is the leading national nonprofit dedicated to changing the culture for all students. It works to reduce and prevent bullying, cyberbullying, and other digital abuse, educates against homophobia, LGBTQ discrimination, racism, and hatred, and deters violence in schools, online, and in communities across the country. In this diverse world, Stomp Out Bullying promotes civility, inclusion, and equality. It teaches effective solutions on how to respond to all forms of bullying, as well as educating kids and teens in school and online. It provides help for those in need and at risk of suicide, and raises awareness throughout peer mentoring programs in schools, public service announcements by noted celebrities, and social media campaigns. Stomp Out Bullying is recognized as the most influential anti-bullying and cyberbullying organization in America and beyond. When adults respond quickly and consistently to bullying behavior, they send the message that it is not acceptable. Research shows this can stop bullying behavior over time. End the hate. Change the culture. To find out more, visit stompoutbullying.org. That's a wrap for the Maria Cozette Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I think you guys could tell how excited I was interviewing Roger Kupelian. I mean, the guy is just creative brilliance, and keep an eye out for all the amazing things that he does and will be doing. And of course, for any further information about the show, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and always remember, everyone, stay creative.